Hello everyone, my name is Carrie Walker and welcome back to my channel. And we're finally doing a part 2 of the journaling tips and tricks video that I did quite some time ago now. You guys loved that video and I've been meaning to do a part 2 for the longest time. So I racked my brain with some tips, I wrote down a bunch, and I actually came up with a lot more than 10 tips. But I thought I'd save some of those tips for a future part 3 video if I do a part 3. So make sure to give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoy it, which will let me know if you guys want a part 3 or not. We're just gonna go ahead and jump right in with the tips because I'm just super eager and excited. But so starting from the beginning, I have my list written right over here on my computer and it's like blasting up at me so I can like use it as a reference. The first tip that I have, or rather the 11th tip that I have, but the first tip for this video is that you need to find the time of day that journaling works best for you. Some people love journaling in the morning, some people do it in the afternoon, like at their lunch break, some people do it at night at like, you know, dinner time, some people do it right before they go to bed. You can also do it sporadically whenever you want. It doesn't always need to be at the exact same time, but especially when you are trying to create it as a habit in your routine, doing it at the exact same time every day is super beneficial to just kind of like creating that into your schedule. Because if you're kind of just doing it whenever, it can be really difficult to remember like, oh, I need to journal, whatever. But if at every day at like 2 p.m. you're like, I'm gonna go journal, then it'll be a lot easier to just kind of like, again, build that habit. But so I feel like there's like this idea that some people have that there is a right way to journal, and there really is not. And that goes for like the way you write, how you write, when you write. And so for this specific thing, like when you write, there isn't a right way, but there might be a right way for you. What I tend to do is I usually write at nighttime. Honestly, it's just because like with the craziness of my day, I am just going, and I like to use it as like a little way to kind of decompress before I go to bed at night. However, I will say that the times that I've journaled in the morning, it has totally set my day up for success, and I always feel like so much more like level-headed and well-rounded throughout the day. Even though I've recognized that though, I have found that journaling at nighttime truly is what works better for me. However, there are plenty of times throughout the day where I'm like, you know what, I want to journal right now. I just like am really feeling called to like write about this thing, or I want to just get my journaling done for the rest of the day because I don't want to have to do it later on. Which, side note, if you're new, I have been daily journaling for almost 5 years now, but I've been journaling since I was 6 years old. So when it comes to the daily journaling, I always try to start my journal entries before midnight. A lot of the times if I know I'll be busy later on, I will go ahead and write earlier in the day so that I don't miss that midnight deadline that I have for myself. But aside from that, I write all different times. But what works for me might not work for you. I really encourage you guys to kind of just try all of the different times and see what works best for you. You can literally write whenever, and that's okay. Okay, so for tip number 2, it is that when you're writing, try to be your honest present self and not the person that your future self wants you to be. This is something that I struggle with a lot because I know a lot of you guys have told me that you kind of filter what you have to write because you're scared someone will read your journal. But for me, the only reason I would ever filter my journal really is because I'm scared that my future self is gonna look back at it, reread it, and judge myself, which is such a hard mindset to break through. It's a really difficult thing to kind of sit with and deal with and figure out and navigate. It kind of ties back to one of my previous tips in the part 1 of this video where I said to not make yourself the hero. Tip number 6 is to not make yourself the hero. It's a little different though because this is more specific to like the reason behind that. But so sometimes I will hold back from writing about certain things, or I will kind of like shape it in a way that I'm hoping my future self will approve of, because I am just so self-critical of myself sometimes, and I'm just terrified of looking back at who I used to be and being like, why was I like that? Because that can be really embarrassing and hard to admit to yourself. But at the end of the day, that's not gonna be helpful for you because you need to be writing honestly in order for it to truly benefit your mental health. If I am like truly having like a bad day, week, month, I might try and look on the bright side and like hold back from writing about all of those like negative things because I'm like, I don't want to look back at this person that was like super, you know, sad all the time. But if I truly am sad inside, writing about like things that I'm not feeling and just pretending like I'm not feeling those things is not going to help me like sort through that. On a different topic, it can be very helpful to write about like more positive things, like look on the bright side, focus on the good. But at the same time, you kind of do need to admit that like you are feeling a certain way or whatever it might be. That's just an example. possible. What I'm trying to say is that at the end of the day, your future self will look back and recognize the growth that you've made. And yes, I know it can be so embarrassing to look back at like things you've written in middle school or things that you totally like have changed from and disagree with or whatever, but that is the accurate representation of who you are, and it's not helpful for you in the present moment to write about something that you're not, and it's not that great for your future self to look back on something that was a false representation of yourself. So really try and do your best to be very self-aware of the way you're writing, the way you're presenting yourself, and try to just be as honest as possible with your current self. Try to portray yourself in the way that you are and the way that you're feeling and what's going on in your life or whatever it is that you write about, because that's what's going to be helpful for you. That's what you're going to appreciate one day when you read back on it and just reflect on how much you've grown over time. My third tip is to write about yourself. So this kind of sounds like what I was just saying, to write about your honest self, but what I mean by this is to literally write about who you are. A lot of the times when you start journaling, a lot of people just start being with like, today I did this and this and this and this, but have like a little introduction to yourself. I always think about like, how would I write if I forgot who I used to be? Now, I'm not like constantly defining people in terms and whatever, but like I am mindful of like when I introduce a new concept into my journal, even though I might be familiar with it in my present day life, my journal doesn't know about it. So like if I introduce like a new friend, I'll be like, instead of just being like me and whoever went to this place today, I'll be like, oh, me and whoever, she's my new friend, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But the same thing goes for who you are. Your journal doesn't know you. And again, your future self looking back on what you wrote would love to know about your hobbies, your name even, you know, like that sounds so obvious, but a lot of people don't write like my name is this or whatever it may be, or who your family is, what you like to spend your time doing, what you want to be when you grow up, what your passions are, what you look like even. That's like a great thing I know I would love to look back on. I think I might have written my height like in my elementary school journal, and it was like so crazy to be like, oh my gosh, I used to be that tall. And you know, I'm not that much taller, I'm only 5'1" now, but even then it was cool to like see those things. So introduce yourself to your journal, write about that, because it's so cool to be able to look back on that. And it's also like a cool way to like reflect on who you are as a person currently and just like be very like aware of who you are. So write about yourself. Don't be afraid to, you know, be selfish. It's your journal. Write about whatever you want. Write about you. It's fun. It's cool. It's great. We love journaling. Now, kind of on the flip side, but also going hand in hand with that, for my fourth tip, it is to write about others. I feel like I so easily get in the flow of writing about me. And like, to be fair, it's your journal. You can write about you if that's all you want to write about. But that being said, I try not to be too self-absorbed in my journals and only write about my day, what I did, and everything about me, because although it is my life and my journal and I totally have the authority to do that, I also know that my friends and my family and all of that, they are huge parts of my life. And even like strangers that I've interacted with, it's really cool to focus on like that like little moment of your day and writing that down, instead of just like being like, oh, this person did this to me. It's instead, oh, like my significant other or my sibling or my friend or whoever it is in your life is accomplishing this goal or is doing this thing or was telling me about that. And it's really cool to just like kind of have that in your journal as well, because they mold you into who you are, and it's cool to have that documented down as well. And personally, I really love, those are some of my favorite things to read back on, is my stories and everything that I've written about my family members and my friends and everything. I have a journal entry from when I was really little. I think I was in like first grade or something like that. And I was writing about how much I hated my brother because he kept killing us on the Wii in this game that we were playing. It was like New Super Mario Bros. And he kept like speeding through the levels and killing us. And so we got it taken away, and I was like so mad at him, and I ended the journal entry with like, and that's why I hate Nate very much. And it was just like, that's just so funny to look back on, you know, like seeing those things and being able to share it with them. Or even a more recent example, literally yesterday, I was writing about my sister Sammy, and she had her field hockey tryouts and they had to run 3 miles. And Sammy was super duper nervous for it because we are walkers. My last name is Walker. I always say we are walkers for a reason. We are not runners, we're walkers. But Sammy especially is not a runner. She's never even run a mile. So she was very nervous for this 3-mile run in her field hockey tryouts. And I don't blame her. I would be nervous too. I've done a little bit of running in my life and I don't know if I could do 3 miles. Literally today I was like dying running a single mile. I just suck at running. But anyway, so she had her tryouts and she ran the 3 miles in under 30 minutes. And like, I'm no runner. I don't know like running scores, running times, whatever, but 3 miles in under 30 minutes, that's really good, especially for somebody who hasn't ever run before. That's really good. She just destroyed that. So I wrote that in my journal. I was so proud of her and she was proud of herself, and it was a really cool achievement. And I know that one day I will love to look back on that because, you know, she might not be writing it down. So I'm pointing over here because her room's like right behind me. But like, she's not journaling or anything, and maybe she might forget that or something. Regardless, it's cool for me to have that written down, for me to look back on, because that's a thing that I was so proud of my sister about. And then one day I can share it with her and be like, oh my gosh, remember this day? Like, I wrote this about you, and that's, you know, super cool. I could have easily just been like, oh, today I dropped Sammy off at her field hockey tryouts and then I came home and like studied for my EMT class. But I like elaborated on like somebody else, and I feel like that's a really good practice, even just in general in your life, is to focus on others. And so if you do that in your writing, you just are kind of like more considerate of other people's lives and their feelings and the things going on around them and around you. And I just think it's a cool thing to just like document and share. But you know, if you want to write only about you, then that's your choice. And that's what's great about journaling, is that you can literally do whatever you want with it. Just because I'm saying, you know, you have to do it this way, I'm not even saying you have to. You don't have to do anything I'm saying. What's great about journaling is that you can hear my tips and advice and everything and what I do, but you can totally do whatever you want because it's yours. But so anyway, that tip leads me straight into my next tip, tip number 5, and that is to share your old journal entries with family and friends if you're comfortable with it. You don't need to share anything you don't want to share. You know, if I wrote about like my twin brother being super annoying or something, like maybe I don't want to like share that with him or something. I don't know. Personally, I would be like, oh my gosh, Ben, look at this stupid thing I wrote about you. You're being like really annoying to me, or I don't know. I think that would be funny. But like, regardless, you don't need to share anything you're not comfortable with. But if you do feel comfortable with it, I think it's so special to be able to share that with the people that you like wrote about, the people in your lives. So like, I could totally share with Sammy that like, oh, I wrote about your field hockey stuff. It doesn't need to be immediately. I did tell her though that I was gonna be sharing it in this video, and like she said that was totally okay and everything. So she does know that I wrote about her. But like in a normal like circumstance, typically I would like write about it, and then maybe like months, years later, I would find it again and be like, oh my gosh, Sammy, like look, I wrote this about you, which I'll probably end up doing at some point. But like another thing that was like super special is back in like when was it? Like 2016 or something? I think it was 2016, maybe 2014. No, I think it was 2016. I don't know. Anyway, my family friends got married and they did like a surprise wedding, and I was like out kayaking on the lake in their backyard with like my sister or something. And so we came back up and like we had missed the surprise wedding, and like we didn't know because it was literally a surprise. Like it was so crazy. But I like was writing all about it, and I was like writing, like I wrote like 6 pages about how upset I was that I missed that stinking wedding. Because like, how could I have possibly known? But I was like, oh my gosh, they like blah blah blah, and I'm so sad. I'm so happy for them, but I'm so upset I missed it. And so I read back on that and I was like, that is so cute. Like I was like 14 or something at the time, or however old I was, and I went and I shared it with them, and I showed them like, this is what I wrote about like when you guys were getting married. And it's so cool to like share with them that perspective, because obviously that was like their big day and everything, and they had their memories from it, but they got like another perspective of something that like they hadn't thought about. So if you're comfortable with sharing your journal entries with the people that you write about, or even if it's not even about them, even if it's just like a journal entry that you've written that you're like, oh my gosh, look at this stupid thing I wrote when I was younger, or look at like this really like self-aware thing or whatever you wrote and you just want to share it with someone. You guys know me, I might share a little bit too much. I literally have my reading my old diary videos on this channel where I read like my old diaries to you guys and show you all what I used to write about as like an elementary schooler. But like, it's so cool. Think about the amount of enjoyment that you guys get from me sharing those journal entries, and I just like, I don't know, I think it's so cool. Sharing is caring, right? Okay, so my 6th tip is to reread your journal entries with intention. And I did say, I think it was like my last tip of the part 1 of this video, and it was to like reflect back on old journal entries. But this tip is a little bit different because this time it's with intention. So instead of just like looking back and being like, wow, I used to be like such a nice person, or wow, I used to be like really mean and rude or whatever, like instead of just rereading your journal entries for enjoyment, try to also add that layer of intentional rereading in there. And what I mean by that is to like kind of of jog your memory on what you were writing and the way you were writing, and try and alter the way you currently write if it didn't like make sense, or if it like felt like just not you. I feel like I'm doing a bad job explaining this. Just look back at what you were writing, the way you were writing, what you were writing, and if it doesn't sit well with you, then maybe make a change. I look back at a lot of my high school years, and my journal entries are very much focused on how tired I was and how much I just wanted to be done with high school, with the IB diploma. And so there are two things with that. You can either look back and be like, dang, I was actually really happy in high school and I only wrote about the negative things and I should have written more about like the good things as well. Or if you genuinely were like unhappy in that period of your life, and maybe you still are, you can then make a change on the way you're living, because your journaling can reveal things to you about yourself that you might not have really even noticed. So if I see that I every day am writing about how tired I am, how I don't want to journal, how I'm just like wanting to sleep and I have just so much on my chest, if I'm not actively like realizing how often I am worn down, my journaling can really like speak to me when I'm reading back on my journal entries with intention, and I can be like, wow, I need to make a change. Or you can just be like, hey, I should try and really make an effort to write about some good things as well. That's something I've been trying to do recently. I've been trying to write more like positive affirmations in my journaling, because I don't want it to always just be like negative stuff, you know. Like, it's great to get that off my chest, but that kind of just like brings me to a baseline. If I'm upset or something or tired or whatever, I'll like get it out and it brings me to like a baseline. But if I like write about the good things in my life, then I'll be like, wow, I'm so grateful, I'm so happy, I'm like in love with my life, which I think is a great place to strive to get to. Easier said than done. But anyway, moving on to the next tip. We're gonna try and speed stuff up because I've been rambling so much. Number 7 is that you don't need to reread everything. You don't need to reflect on everything either. I know I've been saying you need to reflect, you need to share stuff with others, you need to blah 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 blah, and like self-improve and better yourself, but don't make yourself go crazy. What I love about having so many journals is that I can look back and just like randomly discover things that I totally forgot about. You know, if I was like constantly aware of every single thing in these journals, where's the fun in like reading back on stuff? I'd just be like, oh yeah, I knew that. It's so cool finding like a memory and being like, oh my gosh, I forgot that happened. But also, I simply do not have that time. I feel like a lot of people are like thinking that I am constantly flipping through the pages of my journals, when really it's kind of not that frequent. A lot of the times it's when I'm like, oh, what was that memory that I had? And then I like will try and like go back and see if I wrote about it, or like find the specific entry that I'm thinking of, and then I'll go down a rabbit hole of reading all of my journals and I'll just be like, oh my gosh, and it's so distracting and I just get sucked into that void. But I have 19 filled journals, filled to the brim with words, and I'm currently on my 20th. I don't have the time to sit down and read all 20 of those. That's like 20 books. I don't have the time to do that. One day I would love to look back and read all of my journal entries like cover to cover, but right now that's not a thing that's gonna be happening. I don't have that kind of time. And also, I don't need to be this perfect person that is like constantly nose deep in my journals trying to better myself, because you know, I can do that without constantly like focusing back on like who I used to be. Because if you're constantly being like, oh, I used to be that way, oh, I used to be this way, how are you gonna like focus on who you are right now? You know, I like reading back on my journal entries with intention and for enjoyment, but not all the time. You don't need to. My golden rule of journaling is that you need to find what works for you. And then my 8th tip is that you don't need to write about everything either. This is a very, very big thing that I used to struggle with. You'd think that writing every single day, I would run out of things to write about and I couldn't possibly have anything else to write about, but you'd be very surprised about the amount of things that I don't write about. Even just writing like a page a day, that's only a fraction of my life. And I get so stressed about like, oh my gosh, I'm not including everything. I'm not writing about this big thing that happened, or like this little thing that happened, or like whatever, because I feel like I need to document everything. But even just like reminding myself that I'm not going to be able to read back on all of it, it's not the end of the world if I don't write everything, and it's simply impossible to do that too. So I'm doing my best to try not to like stress about those things. I will have like literally like long lists of things that I want to write about. I literally made a video of journaling all day long where I wrote 30 pages because I just had so many things I still wanted to write about, because I'm so stressed that I like need to write everything, and I don't. And I'm still trying to find that balance for myself. But you know, don't get me wrong, I still make the occasional list of stuff I want to write about or that I still haven't written about, whatever, but I just try not to stress about it as much. I've really been trying to learn to let go and just know that everything will be okay even if I don't write about it, because you can't write about everything. Now moving on, if you totally are out of ideas and you just have nothing to write about, or maybe you're starting journaling and you don't know where to start, I really recommend that you try using journal prompts. Journal prompts are such a great way to just get your mind moving, get your thoughts flowing. I actually do have a journaling prompt challenge up on my channel. I did it this past January where I uploaded daily videos every single day for the whole month, and then it's 5 minutes of unedited footage so that you could have like a little journaling buddy. I was just like journaling right there with you, and then I went and read my journal entry in the following episode for the next day. So if you're in need of journaling prompts, you can totally go to that challenge. I also made a whole video where I have 125 plus journaling prompts. So there are a bunch of ideas there for you guys if you're interested. And even if you aren't out of ideas with like what to write about, I still do encourage you guys to try out journaling prompts. I found that it's personally not for me, but I still love using journal prompts here and there, and the entries that I have with those journal prompts, I feel like it just totally broadens the scope of my journals, like what I've written about and everything. The way you answer a prompt is so much different than the way you write about your day-to-day life. My journal prompt entries tend to be a bit more like thoughtful and like self-reflective rather than like documenting what I did that day or what I'm feeling and stuff. So try it out, see what works for you, and let me know how it goes. And then my 10th and final tip is to make it messy. Your journaling does not have to be perfect. You're allowed to have spelling mistakes, you're allowed to have those things, but take it a step further and add some mess to it. I love looking back on pages where I've totally just scribbled things and like written things down, and if you really just want to have a journal that is just super like neat and like perfect and beautiful, like if that's your thing, go ahead and do it. But I just want you to know that you don't need to make it perfect. You are allowed to be messy, and don't try and like hide that. I make spelling errors all the time, and that's totally okay. I just cross it out and keep on going. Your journaling doesn't need to be these like exquisite masterpieces or anything like that. There are so many times where I'll just like scribble down some stuff, like do a little doodle, write random to-do lists or something. To-do lists are my favorite. I love to-do lists. I try not to like use them all the time in my journal entries because honestly I don't care to look back on a bunch of to-do lists, but sometimes it can be very helpful to do that. I love just like bulleting out my day because sometimes I don't have the mental energy to write full sentences or anything. Honestly, I just try to find that balance and find what works best for me, and at the end of the day I'm not gonna stress over it because it's okay. It's gonna be okay. There's no right way to journal, and you're never doing something wrong, you know? That's what's really cool about journaling. But anyway, that's all for my 10 tips. I know this video was really long, but if you enjoyed it, please give it a big thumbs up. Comment down below your thoughts. Comment any of your journaling tips. I'd love to hear your thoughts and everything. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I love each and every one of you. Stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye guys!